Hello and welcome! Making a licensed game should be one of the easier games to make, since a lot of the planning for that game is already done. You already have the blueprints for the world, you have the characters that will live in this world. You'll know who the hero is, their struggles, their foils, and as a game designer, all you need to do is make all that fit into the shape of the game, and everything else will just fall into place. But this perfect scenario is rarely the case, and sometimes a developer will actually receive a license to make a game before that license is even done. Take for instance the Spongebob Squarepants movie game, which was released on all platforms a full week before the movie even touched a theater. And today we're going to be looking at how that affected the PC game. Before we begin, a quick message from us at 16-Bit. If you don't know what to do with your Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance games when you're done playing with them, why not check out our Game Boy display shelves? They're designed and 3D printed by us to hold your games comfortably and display them beautifully. If you're interested, why not check out the description to figure out where to get them today. The Spongebob Squarepants movie was the first feature film about SpongeBob SquarePants made by Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon Movies to be released eventually in November of 2004. And since this was supposed to be a kids movie, a tie-in game was pretty much a requirement for the time. And for that perfect corporate synergy, it needed to be released around the time that the movie was. Since deadlines were going to be short, the games were given to experienced developers of the SpongeBob license. For the console games, the rights were given to Heavy Iron, who just completed SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. And for the PC rights, it was given to the most experienced SpongeBob developer, Aw Games. By this point in time, Aw Games had 3 SpongeBob games released in a yearly cycle, and also being with the PC series since its first outing with Operation Krabby Patty. Since both Aw Games and Heavy Iron just finished with SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, which was released in October of 2003, they had about a year to design, test, and release their SpongeBob SquarePants movie games in order for it to be synergized with the movie. Now, this shouldn't have been an issue for Aw Games, since this fits their typical yearly release schedule, though the deadlines were still quite tight, and it appears that they did speed up development by reusing and improving their point-and-click formula from SpongeBob SquarePants Employee of the Month. They also reused a lot of the music and sound effects from that game too. But weirdly, they didn't reuse the graphics engine, instead borrowing that from their newest title, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. And as a result, not only does the movie game look considerably better than Employee of the Month, but the characters in it are a lot more expressive, and the game overall is less terrifying. But not everything is recycled from the previous games. There is new music, which is good, new characters, which look pretty good, new locations, and more. And Aw Games managed to even shoehorn in some Flash-style minigames to pad out the overall experience. But for me, the most striking new addition for this game is its nearly menuless interface, where all interactions is toggled with just the mouse. Personally, I'm more familiar with the classic style interface of point-and-click games of yesteryear, and it did take a bit of time for me to get used to it. I'm not a fan of it overall, but it does do the job, and by the end of the game, I barely noticed it at all. So visually and mechanically, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie is a pretty good game. But since it is a point-and-click graphic adventure game, none of that really matters if the story itself isn't any good. And honestly, the PC game has a pretty good SpongeBob-like story, much like Employee of the Month. The writing is witty and as humorous as ever. And despite one or two odd moments with Mindy, the game itself was fun from the beginning to the end, and it was a pleasure to play through. So it's sad to say that despite how good of a SpongeBob game Oz version of it turned out to be, it does have one major issue which brings down the entire experience. You see, my expectations for this game was simple. The game was supposed to be about getting the crown, saving the town, and Mr. Krabs from Plankton's evil Plan Z, just like the movie. And while it tries its best to follow the movie's plot, it sadly meanders about too much with random side plots that go nowhere and has nothing to do with getting the crown, saving the town, or Mr. Krabs. And if this was any other SpongeBob PC game, like Employee of the Month, this meandering I feel would probably be fine. In fact, it'd probably enhance the experience. But because the SpongeBob Squarepants movie has such a defining, clear plot, I feel that any diversion from it will distract me. And as a licensed video game, distracting the player is the last thing it should be doing, since now my attention is focused on the flaws of the game and its plot, rather than what made it good or funny. Take for instance the revolution of the invertebrates to go and see a chiropractor. In concept it's insane, but in execution it was perfect. It was hysterical, humorous writing and all. It should have been the highlight moment of the entire movie, and it should have de-stressed a very stressful moment in the game. But in practice, because it's not getting the crown, it's not going to help you save the town, and it's definitely not going to save Mr. Krabs, it sadly becomes a hindrance, something to slow the plot down and to distract you from the main plot of the game. And as a result, something that should have been funny and brilliant is now an annoyance. And despite having a weak story and its own slew of issues, Heavy Iron managed to actually make a better SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, and that's only because it was able to keep the distractions down to a minimum, bring the gameplay forward, and having that gameplay focused on getting the crown, saving the town, and Mr. Krabs. And it results in a better game overall. So, if the console game is a better game overall, should you even consider getting the PC game then? I feel it's worth looking at. The SpongeBob SquarePants PC game was a best case scenario out of a really bad situations, and with all aside, they were able to make a pretty faithful SpongeBob game out of what feels like an incomplete movie script. But once you bring in the past SpongeBob point-and-click games, it starts becoming a little harder to recommend. My recommendations for this game is the same as how I now feel about the console titles. Play the previous game first. Because it was made with a lot lax time restrictions, and they were given a little bit more freedom with how to handle the property, I feel it's a better game overall. But if you want more of that same SpongeBob experience, then the SpongeBob SquarePants movie is absolutely worth getting, since it's the same as the old game, but it's in a different coat of paint. And if you happen to have the DVD copy of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, then you actually already own a free demo of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game. So you can try it out if you haven't. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.